Michelle Redfern, what a delight. Thank you so much for being here today. This is one that I would say should have been on the cards for probably close to a decade, but here we are.
Here we are, Kylie Stone, back at you. It's wonderful to reconnect with you here. And as we were just saying before we started recording, just one of our conversations is going to get recorded now. So this will be interesting.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, look, there is so much that I know that we're going to get into today, but first and foremost, I do want to start with, I suppose the work that you're doing and why you're here ultimately, and what is this mission that you're on?
Well, the mission that I'm on is well, the very pat sentence is my mission is to close the global leadership gender gap. And where does that come from? It comes from a lifetime of A, being a woman, B, being someone who is highly annoyed, outraged, angry at injustice, and also entering my 50s going, what the hell? Why is this shit not fixed yet? So, there's a saying that angry women will change the world. And I think, well, count me in because I'm there. So, yeah, this mission is to really, level the playing field, close the gap. I want women and girls to be considered worthy and valued and respected automatically, just like our male counterparts benefit from right now. So that's what I'm all about.
So how did this start for you? I think this probably I know because this it has certainly escalated in my experience over the last 20 years,
Yeah.
which was often a surprising thing for me because I think the era in which I spent my early career, it didn't seem to be a top of mind topic, and then all of a sudden it became into the foreground. How did you get on this journey?
Well, it's really interesting. I had, like a lot of women, I went through these stages, and I'm going to steal unashamedly from Holly Kramer, who I heard speak about 10 or 12 years ago. She said, there are 4 stages to feminism. The first one is ignorance, as in no idea what's going on out there. I don't think I was ever there because I was brought up in a very feminist, social justice kind of environment. The second one is awareness. Oh, I'm kind of aware that there's some people out there that don't do very well for one reason or another. The third stage is outrage, like WTF, and often that's because you experience your first level of injustice, personal
Mm,
injustice, and then the fourth stage is advocacy. So the awareness started growing for me really in my 20s, and I didn't have the tools or the knowledge to do much about it other than be angry. And it was when I started having kids. I had kids
mm.
really young. I had my first child when I was 25. Always wanted to work. I love work. I love going to work. I love being working, blah, blah, blah. And there was this. Now my kid's nearly 34, so let's just put some dates around. He was born in 1990, so I know some of your listeners will go, geez, I wasn't even born then. But anyway, so hang in there, listeners, hang in there. I'm not going to give you the whole life story. But when Brendan was born, for a whole range of reasons, I had to go back to work financially, but I also wanted to work. And there was these comments. Oh, surely you'd be much happier at home with your child. Surely you'd be better off. Surely he'd be better off. Surely, and I'd go, hang on a minute, no one knows my life, my financial situation, or actually what I want. So I was annoyed in my 20s. Fast forward to my 30s and my career is taking off, but I've
Mm,
also had to make big trade-offs. My kids are in childcare. They're in
mm,
before and after school care. I'm doing, the double shift. I'm working all day and then I'm working, at home.
mm,
And I started going, geez, this is, it kind of sucks, but I'm a second, third generation feminist. We were told we could have it all. We were sold this dream. You could have it all. What we weren't told was you also still had to do it all as well, because
mm,
nothing changed largely for men. And I'm talking about in heterosexual relationships. The caregiving was still done, cooking, cleaning, caring, a lot by women. So I was kind of feeling a
mhm,
bit disgruntled about all of that. And then I hit my 40s and my executive career took off. And of course, I'm at the definitely in the outrage category at this point, going, where's all the women? Yeah. But then my advocacy started to kick in. I went, hang on a minute. Why am I still, I'm in my 40s, why am I still the only woman in the room, or one of a few women in the room, and with some notable exceptions in my career? And why is it only me that's mentoring and coaching women? Why is it only me that's banging on about this? So I got angry again. and I do vacillate between outrage and advocacy every single day, Kylie. In fact, even inside 1 hour. So, my corporate career was still going very, very well in my 40s. And then I tip into my late 40s. I went, you know what? I don't think the Messiah's coming. This is not getting fixed. So I'm going to do something about it. And I decided I think I need to work with women to help them navigate the system. And then I quickly worked out, actually, it's the system that needs fixing, not women. So a combination of, both being, really reaching the I'm so jacked off with the corporate rat race versus finishing my executive MBA, and also waking up one day and going, aha, I finally realised what I'm meant to be when I grow up. That is how and why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And yes, that's evolved over the last 10 years. But for me, it's three things: fix the system, help women navigate the system, and advocate for a better system, so that women and other underrepresented people can thrive, particularly in sport, which is that is my passion zone, and what I also know is strategically very powerful.
So I do want to ask you specifically about your comments on the system. And what that actually, what that means to you. So when you say in the system, what are some of the things that you notice that are actually not working about it, that are making it difficult?
A lack of progressive policy. So we, I still see, and certainly, I'm interested in your view as well around leadership. Everything starts and finishes with leadership, right? People, decision makers, executives in organisations, they are setting the tone for the way we do stuff around here, which is culture. And what I don't see enough of is a real commitment by those executives, by those decision makers, to say, is our workplace fair? Is it equitable? And are we helping every human in our workplace, and also the ones that we want to get into our workplace, reach their full potential? And do I really know what's getting in the way of every human reaching their full potential, particularly the underrepresented ones? And so, I'm a big fan of management by walking around, always have been, even in my, my contact centre days. You go to the smoking corner, you go to the, wander around the contact centre, because you hear stuff. And then you get curious and you start to listen. You go, I can start to hear and see stuff. So the things that are getting in the way are, we still don't have a critical mass of roles in executive teams that are flexible and or including part-time. We have the same model of work, of the way we do work, as we did just post-industrial revolution. We still have people supervising people's attendance, and they'll go, oh, no, we don't. I go, yeah, you do, because this is this whole return to office bullshit that's going on at the moment. I don't trust. So there's a lack of trust at a system level, and those things. So a lack of that shift in corporate and cultural and executive mindsets means that we're not examining what's getting in the way. So that's the system. And then other parts of that system then translate into managers. We're not training managers how to be great leaders. We train managers how to be good technical people and do their technical stuff, how to go to meetings, how to answer emails, how to process forms, how to. But do we teach them how to be people leaders? No. Not in a systematic way. I know you do, and I'm very glad for the organisations that engage with you and with me. But we're not teaching leaders how to be inclusive. And I say often, diversity, equity and inclusion skills are no longer nice to have when you look at the leadership toolkit. For the 21st century organisation that wants to grow sustainably and have the best and brightest people coming to it and staying there and being engaged and productive and happy, those
Mm,
skills are no longer nice to have. So those are, that's a big bucket of word salad there. But
mm,
systems and processes that don't really center on how do we make sure humans, which are at the center of our
mm,
organizations, because
mm,
last time I looked, we didn't have robots running or doing our work. Some of it's been done by them, but you know what I mean.
mm,
So we're not saying how can we really create the best environment for this human to
mm,
reach their full potential. So that's the system. And it's policy, it's practice, it's behaviour, it's mindsets. What do I really believe? What are my beliefs about women
mm,
and
mm,
work,
mm, mm,
careers, leadership,
mm.
power? What do I think when you say women and power? What's the first thing that comes to my mind? Ooh, that's a bit tricky. What do I think about ambitious women? Do I think of that
Mm,
in a pejorative way, or do I think, yeah, gay? There's Michelle and Kylie. They're two ambitious women, and I
mm,
celebrate that. We
mm,
we don't.
mm.
We all have mindsets, and and executives and people leaders need to understand their core beliefs about women, their core beliefs, and then act to intervene or interrupt
Well, I
those
notice I
beliefs
have to
if they're not
interrupt
helpful.
myself too, Michelle. You know, I
And we
notice
all
that.
do.
As soon as you said that about power and women together, my automatic reaction, I think that says a lot for, our humanity is being able to identify your own, what occurs inside of our thoughts prior to speaking, to clarify. Actually, our thoughts are automatic and conditional on our upbringing, and therefore, being able to filter the thoughts from reality, I think, is a really important thing to do, because it's not like you're not going to have those thoughts. I mean, and I think that's a very important thing to bring up for people, because, we could go down the path of making ourselves wrong for even entertaining those thoughts ourselves, but that doesn't provide anything. So, but
Well,
I do want
Kylie,
to.
here's a sorry, and I know as a First Nations woman, I'm very conscious of what I'm about to say to
Yes,
you.
yes.
But I am an inherently racist person.
Mm.
And people they go, no, you can't be, Michelle, because of the word. I said, but this is what I've got to sit myself in. I'm a white woman.
Yes.
I'm inherently racist.
Mm.
So, but I know that about myself because, and I've been brought up that way. Now, that's not my mum and dad's fault. It's
Mm.
society, blah, blah, blah. But
Mm.
I interrupt I don't always get it right. I try to interrupt my inherent racism and be really deliberate about the way I engage with people of colour, people who don't look like me, sound like me. As I said, I'm not perfect and I don't always get it right. And sometimes I will have an immediate thought of, I see a young black man walking towards me down here in the street of Melbourne. I think I'm not safe. I go, come on,
Mm.
Michelle. Come on, Michelle. That was an inherently racist thought. Now you've got to really, so I've got this process going, and it's
Mm.
one of my friends, Erica Jefferson, just yesterday we were talking about this, and she said she's a black woman in America. And she said, Michelle, it's like those of us who have never been skinny or thin. We always think about food. Will
Mm.
this food have calories in it that make me fatter? And she said, and I said, that's so true, because I am not thin. And I do have to think about what makes me fatter or thinner quite often. But what I appreciated about that was I am racist. So I do have to think about, am I having a racist thought? Am I having a sexist thought? Am I having a thought that diminishes women versus, gives them every opportunity? And that's the stuff that I like to talk about, which is difficult and uncomfortable. But if I can do it, anyone can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that goes across the board, and just because this is probably not the one that's not so obvious, because when people do meet me, but they do not know naturally that I'm got an Indigenous background, so it's not obvious.
Mm,
But look, I did spend obviously my entire life being raised as a Western woman, and
mm.
I am very privileged compared to many who are not, those who do have a dark coloured skin. But I'm the same. Those thoughts certainly present themselves to myself, whether so I think it's a responsible thing to do to, bring compassion to our own automatic thinking
Yep.
processes based on the environment we've been raised. And if you can do that, it gives you a place to stop and think about what comes next, more
Mm,
importantly.
mm.
Look, I want to go back to something you said about the system in particular, because I too, as you're right, you're right. It was the same. It is, and I like the fact that you get outraged and angry over it, because there are certainly times to do the same. But to be here today and know that nothing has altered in the flexible way that we approach executive leadership positions. It's almost insane to continue to talk about the barriers to getting more women in leadership without actually addressing the ability for women to be able to do those roles at a stage in their life where they do have mostly, and this is, I know they're very generalist, but if we did the statistics, no doubt that when you're at an age where you are in an executive leadership position, traditionally that you are more likely to be having children. Now, of course, that doesn't talk about, those who choose not to have children, those who cannot have children, etc. But what are we going to do here? Because it's it's not. What do we? How do we help people, Michelle?
Mm,
Like, if
mm.
they're in this situation and they are really frustrated because they are not getting through to those positions and they want those positions, but hours, like you have to be 9 to 5, and what do we do about that?
I just lost you a bit then.
Yeah, you
So
did.
can
It's all
you?
right. It was a good
Yeah,
clean throw. So I'm going to give you the question again.
yeah, cool.
This issue of a lack of flexibility in senior leadership positions continues today as it did 10, 20 years ago,
Mm.
when, you and I were in a position where we had to make some, compromises. But it is the lid on many women getting into
Yep.
executive leadership. What do we do? Like, how do we help people with this? I mean,
Well, there's two really important pieces of, I guess, shifting our mindsets, but the system work. The number one thing is to recognise that women are still doing 75% of the unpaid work in the world. And of that unpaid work, caring constitutes the majority of it. So this is not me making stuff up. This is OECD and UN Women data. So we know that when we share the care, we can start to address that. Now, that's a long play, because what we're asking non-women to do is to start saying, step up in the home, step up with the caring. And, and I'm, interestingly now, my children are grown up, but I have elderly parents. Now, I live on the other side of the country to my elderly parents, but guess what? My younger sister, or my two younger sisters, both still have caring responsibilities for children, one of them in particular, and they now have caring responsibilities for two octogenarians, with one of them with high needs. So my younger sister is in that zone of, I need to do all of this stuff and my job, my paid work. So what we have to do is say, who can step up here? How can we share the care, share that load of caring, the cooking, cleaning, caring, whatever you want to call it, but the caring. So that's number one. Now that's a long road, and we need to change embedded mindsets about the role of women and men in the family, in society, and in workplaces. One way of organisations doing that. So if you're a CEO listening right now going, gee, actually that makes sense, this mad woman that I'm listening to, what might I do? Do you know what? Start to normalise your blokes leaving early to pick up the kids from footy practice. Start normalising the fact that the blokes are going to go and visit mum and dad in aged care at 3 o'clock, because if they go after 5, it's dinner time and then they're all in bed. Start normalising men having a role in that stuff. Start normalising men, and in fact, not normalising, you normalise it through active encouragement of working flexibly. And of course, working flexibly is got about 1,000 different permutations, by saying, I want to see more men as champions of flexible work. I want to see more men taking parental leave. I want to see more men taking carers leave. Your HR departments have got lots of data about who takes what leave and when and what have you. Start looking at that data as a lead indicator to what you might want to do. So when we start to see more men taking up flex roles, when we start to see more men taking up carers leave, parental leave, etc., that is a lead indicator to levelling the playing field. Because what then happens is, well, hang on a minute. If I've got 40 hours worth of work to do every week, if a role's got 40 hours worth of work, I'm going to ask someone to do it over 30 hours. That means I've got 10 hours left over. Okay, so I'm going to have 5 roles, and that means there's 50 hours. Hang on a minute, there's another role. Well, goodness gracious me, let's do a bit of org redesign here. So my OD colleagues out there will be going, yes, start to redesign your organisations to say, what is the workload and how do we distribute it equitably, i.e. everyone gets their 30 hours, because this 4-day working week is really gathering steam. How do we give everyone 30 hours worth of work to do, meaningful work, not showing up to an office? And then how do I make sure that I've got an equitable spread of people, of humans of different genders across those roles? That's how we fix it. So it takes a real system approach, Kylie, and it says, and it's not just doing the same old, which is I've got a CEO who's got 8 direct reports who have also got 8 direct reports each, and we all do this and blah, 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 blah. And we've got this, blah, blah, blah. No. Redesign the organisation and then redesign roles. When I was working at the National Australia Bank, this is not new, by the way, and it's not my idea. So I'd love to say it is, because I'd be very rich and famous, I think. But anyway, but it's not. But when I was at the NAB, and so this is coming up for 10 years ago, there was a woman there called Sally Collins, who is now the COO, just appointed as COO of Aware Super. Sally Collins, executive role, working part-time. We also had a number of senior roles, heads of and GMs, job sharing. That was 10 years ago. Now, is the NAB the shining light of workplace relations? Absolutely not. But it did some pretty good stuff. And, so this is easy to do when you're deliberate and intentional. So CEOs and executives listening, have a look at the way work is done, and then how do you distribute that more equitably? Because I've got to tell you, there'll be executives on your team right now going, I cannot take on one more initiative because I'm about to hit burnout. You talk about burnout, Kylie, a lot. Let's really examine, do we want our people to flourish and thrive and really enjoy work, or do we want to burn them out in 3 years like we're doing at the moment?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of really big gnarly rocks here that we can really fix if we get deliberate about designing organisations, designing roles to do the work that needs to be done.
It's gold. So I do want to flip to an acknowledgement, and congratulations on publishing your book, The Leadership Compass.
Thank you.
I am curious about, anyone who puts the effort into publishing a book, in my humble opinion, is remarkable. Given every story I've heard is that it's almost like birthing your own child. So firstly, congratulations on doing that. What had you want to write the book? What is the purpose of the book and the message?
It's the second pillar of how I deliver on my mission. It's being a guide for women. So I was having some executive coaching in my late 40s, and the person coaching me said, what do you really want? And I said, I actually want my daughter to be as confident as I am now at 40, I think I was 46, at the age of 24. And in fact, I shouldn't have used my daughter, because Kelsey is way more confident and courageous than I will ever be. But I just said, I want the next Michelle at 24 or 25 who's looking out at life and leadership and going, am I good enough? I want her to be as confident as I am. I don't want her to wait 20 years to be as confident as I am now. And she said, so what are you going to do about that? I went, I don't fucking know. I don't know. I just keep telling her. She said, sit with that. You've got to think about that, because you are getting so close to working out what you want to be when you grow up. And it did form. It forms part of my pillars, which is I want to be a guide for women. So I've said in my programs for years, think of me as your human GPS. Think of me as your human compass. I had to say GPS because some younger women don't know what a compass is. But anyway, so with the greatest respect to the zillennials and what have you. So I'd
Yes.
actually have to show them a compass sometimes. I think of me as your human GPS, and compass sounds better on a book than GPS. But anyway,
Yes,
so
yes.
I want to help them navigate because the system isn't fixed yet, Kylie,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you and I've just talked about that, and it's
Mm.
not going to be fixed soon. So
Mm.
how do we navigate? Because I have navigated that system successfully, really
Mm.
successfully, and
Mm.
continue to do so. There
Mm.
are tips and tricks, and there are techniques, and there is a formula. And when you get that formula, and that's what I had to do, is all this stuff that I'd learned over time and gathered, like a moss, what is it? The rock gathering moss as it rolls along.
Mm.
I'm covered in moss. So I wanted to
Mm.
share my moss.
Yes.
But I didn't want to go into wherever I'm going next after this life with all that knowledge and that wisdom,
Mm.
and of course I've had some epic fails, and I've learned from my epic fails, and I want to share my epic fails with women and say, try to avoid this because this is what
Yes.
happened to me, but this is what I learned.
Mm.
So that's why I wrote it. And, I mean, it's a culmination of 8-9 years of working with women, and I just went, yeah, this is worth putting into a book. And of course, my delightful publishers pursued me for a couple of years to say, come on, hurry up and write the book. And I went, yeah, I don't know. So anyway.
Well, I love the comment about epic fails, and would love to hear one of your epic fails, and what you learnt from it.
Well, I do cover this in the book, and I was recruited for a particularly senior role. I'd catapulted myself out of Telstra after I'd been there for 15 years, and did that for a whole range of reasons. But I was recruited by a company that I wasn't a stranger to. I had been their client when I was at Telstra, so they recruited me to be a commercial director. So look after relationships, build the business, grow the business. And I worked out pretty quickly that they thought I was a lot smarter than I was. They thought I knew about financial stuff. And
Right.
I'd bullshitted my way in. And
Wow.
sorry, Denise and Paul, they know now. Denise knows. But anyway, um, and I suddenly realised that my financial acumen was woeful. And, I didn't even really know how to use Excel. And I'm suddenly having tasks like, so Michelle, will you just go and build the top down, bottom up budget? And by the way, there's a fairly complex pricing model to do for the XYZ. And I'm going, okay, they think I'm smarter than I am. So, but the real catalyst was I had an underperforming contact center, and I knew contact center metrics really well.
Mm-hmm.
But this underperforming contact center was underperforming for both the client from a outcome, so I could fix that. But the financially it was underperforming. I'm going, holy shit, I don't know what to do here. So
Mm.
I was in a real pickle because I thought I'm going to lose my job, and I was so anxious about it. Luckily, I live with a CFO, so my darling wife. I just said to her, I need to know, and she goes, righto, boot camp. So we did
Mm.
an intensive few weeks of the basics, and then she said, righto, you need to go and get the organisational context. So I trudged into the CFO's office and I said, Richard, I really need some help because these financials are they're a bit beyond me. And he goes, that's cool. He goes, no worries. So he partnered me up with one of his young finance managers, Safet, who was just awesome. And he and I would spend an hour together every month going through my financials, working it out. And I learned. So what did I learn? That fake it till you make it is really bullshit advice.
Yes.
Because one day, there's the old saying, bullshit might get you there, it won't keep you there. That was not going to keep me there. So I was really
Mm.
going to be caught out.
Mm.
Um, but you can turn it around. You go, okay,
Mm.
this is a skill, and I just need to learn these skills. I need to learn
Mm.
these techniques and then keep practicing. Kylie, right now, I'm a board director, I'm a business owner, I'm a very commercially savvy businesswoman. Would you come to me as the absolute guru of finance? Absolutely not.
Mm.
But can I hold
Mm.
my own in a boardroom when it comes to
Mm.
the finance and audit committee? Absolutely.
Mm.
So, and this is only, well, I should say it's only 20 years on. So, and I was in my 40s. So that was a
Mm.
big oh shit moment, and it
Yeah.
was almost an epic fail.
Mm. It's
But
so great. Look, I this is really, really valuable for those. And I really liked what you said about the point of the book is such that you could have the 25-year-old version of you learn the lesson and then how
Yep.
to navigate that lesson, right? And this is one that I think is very pertinent across the board, because there is certainly a point where, you do realize that you're not expected to know everything. In fact, actually, what you're better off doing is getting very clear for yourself about what your core competency is. I mean, I'll never forget reading Jim Collins's Good to Great, as an
Oh,
executive team.
Bible.
We read that book. It was just
Yep.
so great because
Yep.
it was the turning point for us going, look, we need to make some decisions at an executive, as an organizational level about what we're here to do. We're a
Mm,
media company. We're not a distribution business.
mm.
So therefore, we need to focus on doing the best of our delivery in that area of expertise and stop trying to be experts in distribution. So it was the time when we made some decisions to outsource some distribution that we were handling internally. But that concept obviously equally applies to us as a human being. When we spread ourselves too thinly in order to try to develop skills across the board, number one, it's not only is it bloody hard,
Mm-hmm.
it's time consuming and exhausting, and quite frankly is the source of why we do get a lot of burnout. But it's one thing to learn that from an epic fail. Now that you look back on that, what's some of the advice you give to others about this and how they can navigate it without the epic fail and pretending that they know everything?
Well, a big part of that was a lesson I learned later, which is around vulnerability. I had to, and this is why I really, really detest fake it till you make it, without some substance behind it. What I learned was I needed to be vulnerable and say, actually, I'm not an expert and I need to ask for help. So two big lessons, which, and I'm still not the greatest at asking for help, I've got to tell you. If my mum was on this podcast, she'd go, yes, she's always been determined. I'll do it. She said, you're so annoying. You never ask for help. And okay.
Yes.
So being vulnerable enough to say, no, I'm not the expert. Being vulnerable enough to say, if I'm on a board, to say, Michelle, do you want to chair the finance and audit committee? Hell no, because I actually
Mm,
think there are better credentialed people to do that. I'm happy to be a committee member because I'm going to
mm,
continue to learn and grow. But so being vulnerable enough to say, to get really real and say, this is not my absolute area of expertise. I'm competent, but I'm
mm,
never going to be brilliant, and that's okay.
mm,
Then part of that vulnerability is saying, who can help me? And that
mm,
was the next part, is who's in my network? And, I'm big on networking and networks and strategic networks, not for the sake of how many contacts on LinkedIn can I create and how many business cards. Who's my board of advisors, my personal board of advisors that I can trust and I can go to? And I have them. By the way, one of them's still my boss from back at that time, Denise.
mm,
Who are those people that I can go to and say, I'm struggling. I'm actually struggling with, insert whatever you're struggling with, whether it's a interpersonal issue, whether it's a technical skill. I'm struggling. I
mm,
need your advice. What should I do now?
mm,
And when we do that, we're really honoring that other person's wisdom. We're
mm,
honoring
mm,
we're honoring them in such a way that is often misunderstood. I feel like I'm being a pain asking Kylie for help. But the reality is, when someone comes to ask you for help, you go, wow, they think I'm good at
mm,
this. It's a
mm.
real honouring thing.
It's a
So
gift.
it is a gift. It's
Yeah.
totally a gift. And that's what I learned is be vulnerable. Stop trying to put the armor on every day and show everyone that you're superwoman and you're invincible and blah, blah,
Mm,
blah, because you're not. And the
mm,
reality is when you do lose all of that armor, suddenly people do see the real you and they go, geez, you're actually quite nice. Actually, quite, I could probably live with you. I could probably, you're okay as a leader instead of this, fucking hell, this bloody woman who's marches through the office like,
mm,
Boadicea and, Joan of Arc, and she's, I wouldn't want to go near her, blah, 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 blah. And
mm,
that's the stuff you open yourself up to. So many, so many more, so much more in terms of the humans and the experiences and the knowledge that you can gain.
mm. Yeah, you bring up, while you were sharing about the vulnerability aspect, I'm often reminded of one of the things that I've noticed about myself is my commitment to simplification,
Mm,
as much as possible. And as you were sharing about the being vulnerable about acknowledging what you're not the expert in, I noticed for myself that I think it made it easier for me when it was not just about acknowledging what I do not know, but that became easier when I started to get clarity about what I was extraordinary at,
yeah.
because it was like I didn't have to feel like I was just not like didn't know nothing. It's not that I don't know anything. It's like no, actually, once I really nailed where my sweet spot was, it became much easier to start identifying all the areas. I mean, there are a lot of things I do not know, and
Mm,
that is an empowering place, but a much easier place to come from, and a less threatening place to come from, because you're actually then putting. And I guess this comes back to a very interesting question. I know you talk about this as well, but values, being
yeah.
able to identify your value
Mm,
rather than being resentful at somebody else's values. And I say that like that because I know in an organization, for example, one of the biggest complaints people have about whether they fit or they do not like their organization is, the organization doesn't align with my values. But
mm,
often, Michelle, what comes next is when I ask the question about their core values, what becomes obvious is they're not actually clear about their unique value and core value. And
yeah.
your experience, like, what's been your experience with that side of things?
The and particularly, I mean, obviously, I work with a lot of women, and I always say there's typically three personas that I work with. There's the younger woman or earlier in her career. Come on, Michelle, show me about leadership. Give me leadership. I want to give me everything. Okay, no worries, happy to do that. There's the second woman who's just got her first big leadership gig. The one who is, the first leader of leaders. That kind of senior manager role. She's going, holy hell, I've wanted it. They've given it to me. What the hell do I do now? No worries, I've
Mm,
got your back. Then there's the third one, and all of these are autobiographical, by the way. The third one is the one who wakes up one day and goes, who the hell am I? What am I doing? Do I want that anymore? What the
mm,
frig? Because I've been
mm,
looking after other people, whether at work or at home. I've been looking after everyone else's needs for the last 20 years. And usually there's been a catalyst. I've been made redundant. I've got divorced. The kids have left home. Kids have come back home. I don't know. There's been a big life quake that she said, I don't know who I am anymore. And part of that is I don't know what my superpowers are. I don't know what
mm,
I'm good at. And
mm,
because I don't know what I'm really good at, my unique value proposition, to use marketing lingo and what have you, I don't quite know what it is that I want to do. And I don't quite know where to channel my energy. And I don't quite know, I just don't know. I'm stuck. And so part of what I do is say, yes, there's probably some technical skills. We can talk about your business, strategic, and financial acumen. Those are baseline. Who are you? Who are
mm,
you? What do you want? How do you show up? How do you want to show up?
mm,
And part of that is saying what really matters to me
mm,
and what am I absolutely great at and what can I be better at, good to great. So
mm,
I agree, getting in touch with what am I good at. And I agree with you. When I got, one of the things about being a business owner is you do start off saying yes to everything because you got to do everything. And then as time has gone on, I've gone, actually there's stuff I don't do. I,
mm,
I don't want to be all things to all people because I just don't. This is what I want to be. I want to be this for organisations. I want to be this for women, and I want to be this for sport. That's
mm,
it. And
mm,
I'm very, very happy for you to come to me for other stuff because I'm going to connect you with another great woman who does that. But
mm,
I don't do it. But
mm,
I'm very clear and courageously clear about what I do and I don't do. And every now and then I'll muck it up and I'll say yes to something and I'll be doing it going, I don't want to be doing this.
mm,
This is not my wheelhouse. I'm not enjoying this. And you know what? As a result of me not enjoying it, they're not getting the best of me, whoever they are. So why did I do this? Come on, Michelle, get back to your core. So
which is what, Michelle? What is the core for you?
the core is, you know, I want to work with every CEO in Australia who wants to be better for women. I want to be
Mhm.
their trusted advisor. And I've got some absolutely extraordinary. I'm thinking of one CEO at the moment I'm working with, him and his team and his broader business, but him specifically, who was vulnerable enough to say to me, I need help, Michelle. I need you to help me get in touch with my organisation, with the women in my organisation, and make this a great place to work for women. I
Mm.
said, no
Mm.
worries. So we catch up about every 6 weeks, one-on-one. We do some other stuff together. And he has been vulnerable and courageous enough to say, I don't know what to do.
Mm.
Let
Mm.
me help you. So that's my zone. I love that. Love working with their team. So I'm good at helping shift mindsets of people who make decisions about the way we do work around here.
Mm.
And the second part is I love working with women who are driven, who are ambitious, are prepared to invest in themselves. So they're
Mm.
saying, I am important.
Mm.
I am important and I'm going to invest in myself. Time, money, effort. I'm going to show up in service of myself and I'm going to help her. Um, and then the third part is I will continue until the day I draw my last breath to advocate for women's sport
Mm.
and women in sport, both on and off the field, particularly off the field. And of course, the stuff that I do with CEOs and women also translates to sporting workplaces. So they're my three. They're my three zones of genius.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. I really love just the passion that you have in the background for your commitment. First and foremost, I hear, having somebody else's back occurs to me like something that you bring that's very unique in your presence. I think it's very obvious that you're on their side. You're on their team with the commitment to having them win. That's
Thanks, Kylie.
undoubtedly very obvious about you, and your advocacy for social justice, I think, is extraordinary as well, and testament to your commitment over the years of pushing through in this area that is, an obstacle for many. So, just remarkable. There's so many. It's been such a delightful conversation. The thing that I would like to wrap up on, which is often the way we end the interview, is to have you complete a sentence for me and really just give us what's really important from your perspective. And it is this: a leader is someone who.
Is able to lead themselves, others, and organisations to reach their full potential.
I love that you started with the self. I just love that, right? Because how do you cannot really, and this is, I have to admit, Michelle, right? I've had to, I've had this kind of question mark over myself at times. I'm like, I know when I say it because I've been through the experience that there's a breakthrough that occurs in my ability to empower others when I've walked that path before, right?
Yep.
And then sometimes when I've said it, I'm like, I notice myself having to provide an example of it because somehow it's not present for me as it's like, how does that make sense?
Mm.
Can you, what's been your experience of, is there been an area for where you've noticed for yourself that, wow, it really has taken for me, seeing it for me before I can see it for others?
I just lost you then. I
I
didn't
know,
get the question.
that's fine. I'm going to ask the question again. So I'll reframe it. Being able to lead oneself before one leads others is often easy to say when you've been through that experience of noticing that you had to do the discovery and walk first before you can lead somebody else down that path. Is there somewhere for you where you've noticed that it's been, wow, I've really had to walk through that for myself first before I can empower others? Is there
Yep.
something you can share with us about that?
Absolutely. And I am very transparent about this and about my mental health. I had a breakdown when I was 40. Now, I don't think I would have called it that at the time, but I absolutely did. I broke. Something in me broke. I got physically sick. I got mentally sick. And as a result of that and a whole bunch of other stuff, I ended up in therapy. So my doctor said to me, you need a psychologist. I thought, oh, here we fucking go. And, it was so funny when the first time I ever watched Brene Brown's vulnerability video, I went, oh my God, she did the same as me, because I marched into this woman's, well, it wasn't an office, it was a beautiful lounge room. I said, righto, I don't want to talk about my childhood because it was happy, da, 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 da. I said, I just need to work out what's going on right now. I don't want to talk about my past because that's all dealt with. And she goes, okay, then, well, what are we going to talk about? I went, well, I don't know, you're the psychologist, tell me. Anyway, 18 months later, after going there every week, I realized I did the work, Kylie, because she made me sit and think about myself. I was that woman, that third woman. I had my body and my mind said to me, stop, and I'm going to make you stop. I got sick, so I had to stop. And I had to really examine who the hell I was and what I didn't know what made me happy. Because that's actually how it started. My doctor said, I want you to write down 5 things that make you happy. And I couldn't. And I cried. And I went, oh my God. Oh. So anyway, so I had to do the work of knowing myself. And once I did that, I learned to like myself. I learned to like my own company, because I was never, ever that person who could be on her own for too long. I had to be with other people because I didn't like myself. I didn't believe the crap that came out of my mouth.
Wow.
And I probably shouldn't have done, actually. But, inherently, I had some really good things going on. I'd learned amazing stuff, but I was living such an external life, such an extrinsically motivated life. I had never examined who I was, and I fundamentally didn't like myself. I fundamentally didn't believe in myself. I had imposter syndrome, but, and I get a bit animated about imposter syndrome because it is assigned to women an awful lot, but I totally had it because I'd never taken the time to work on myself. Deep. So I did that deep work. I continue to do that deep work, very committed to my inner self, because when I'm good, my world is good. I can't be the best version of myself for the people I'm in service of. So those CEOs that I work with, those women that I work with, the sporting industry that I work with, and I'd like to work with more of you, by the way, I can't be what they need me to be if I'm not good. So you've got to lead, and that takes leadership, self-leadership. Gee whiz. And that means saying no. I had to learn how to say no. I had to learn how to stop being a people pleaser. I had to learn how to absolutely believe in what I do and how I do it. That's why I wrote a book. Like part of that, because she still comes out, that little, non-evolved Michelle. Oh, what do you want to write a
like
book
that.
for? Who the hell would read a book that you read? What have you got to say? So she does come out from time to time, and I go, thank you very much, inner critic. Go and sit in the corner and be quiet. You've had enough time. So that's self leadership. You've got to do the work.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. So, Michelle, what is the best way? Firstly, we will be putting the links to the show in the show notes to your book so that people can download a copy of that and purchase that.
Thank you.
What is the best place for people to be able to contact you and learn more about what you're doing?
MichelleRedfern.com is pretty easy, and I'm also fairly active I'm very active on LinkedIn and Instagram, as you know, Kylie. So put it this way: if you Google Michelle Redfern, don't go for the New Zealand rugby player, because I'm built like a front rower, but I'm not a rugby player. That's not me. It's Michelle Redfern, Australia. So yeah.
Oh, just gold. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really delightful and very insightful conversation, and I'm really looking forward to reading your book.
Thanks, Kylie. I just love this conversation. I just love you, and I love what you do. I think you're such a beacon for all of us in finding your true north and yeah, going from good to great, and you keep doing it.
It dropped out, but you kept sharing, so that's absolutely good.
I did.
All right.